Hello fans and friends across the universe. Welcome to my YouTube channel From Me to You. My name's Keir Smith. For today's video I'm going to take you through a bunch of old Beatle related newspaper clippings and promotional posters from the late 60s and early 70s. And I'll also show you some newspaper clippings from my very own Beatles scrapbook that I put together in the late 90s. Around 25 years ago I bought 5 big black bin liner bags full of Beatle related newspaper clippings and articles. These had obviously been collected by a big fan: newspaper articles, promotional posters from music magazines, interviews and reviews, you name it. It's as if any time the Beatles were in the news, this fan cut it out and kept it. And I was 16 or 17 years old when I bought all of this stuff. I would head into Nottingham city centre with my hard-earned pay and visit a second-hand music store called Music Inn in the West End Arcade, and I'd see and speak to the guy there, David Rose, who was a big Beatles fan himself, and he would sell me all manner of Beatle related things, including these factory pressed CDs that I'll show you now. This one here is the Magical Mystery Tour demos. I'll show you the CD and the insert. This next one is called More Sweet Apples, Unpublished Songs and Alternative Versions, 1966 to 1969. There's the CD. And lastly, and this one was great to have at the time, the Beatles, The Complete Rooftop Concert, Thursday, January the 30th, 1969, Charles Hawtrey and the Deaf Aids. I think I paid £15 for each of those 3 CDs back in 1997, 1998, which was quite expensive at the time for what is effectively a bootleg CD. But I didn't mind really. If he had anything remotely interesting or rare relating to the Beatles, I wanted to buy it. Anyway, I went into the store one day and Mr. Rose asked me if I'd be interested in buying all of these Beatle related newspaper clippings and pointed to 5 big bags full of it. So I had a look through one of the bags that was there and I didn't really know what I was looking at or looking for in truth. It was like wading through mud, just hundreds and hundreds of cutouts. But of course it was interesting to a big Beatles fan like me, so I didn't look for too long. I said, yeah, I'll have them. Now Mr. Rose wanted £75 for all of this stuff, which was a fortune to me back then, but I thought I could have a lot of fun with this stuff. And if I remember right, I think I went in and paid him the money the next day and somehow dragged these 5 big bags onto the bus with me and home. And I've sifted through this stuff many times over the years, and I've sold bits and bobs and made quite a bit of money back. But naturally, I kept most of the interesting stuff for myself. So I'm now going to show you various newspaper clippings, promotional posters, reviews, etc. that I thought may be of interest to all of you Beatles and solo Beatles fans out there. And I'll start with this article. This is the front cover of the Daily Express newspaper in England from Monday, August the 28th, 1967. Brian Epstein, death drama. It reads, Brian Epstein, who pushed the Beatles to a multi-million-pound pop career and at the same time made himself a millionaire, was found dead in bed at his home yesterday. He was 32. It then goes on to say, neighbours shock. Neighbours in the select Georgian terrace around the corner from Buckingham Palace were shocked to hear of Epstein's death. Despite the world he lived in, he seemed a very quiet living type, said one. The last time there was any excitement at the house was when an ambulance called there some months ago. We understood then that Mr. Epstein had been taken quite seriously ill and had gone to hospital. But we saw him later and he seemed fully recovered. There you go. I'll just give you a close-up of the date there. You should be able to see that there at the top. And I'll hold the article there for you. And if you zoom in, hopefully you'll be able to read the text. Up next is a promotional poster for the Beatles' Get Back single. This is from Melody Maker Music Magazine, April 19th, 1969. The Beatles, As Nature Intended. And again, I'll hold that there for you to have a good look at. It says, Get Back is the Beatles' new single, It's the first Beatles record which is as live as can be in this electronic age. Paul's got this to say about Get Back. We were sitting in the studio and we made it up out of thin air. We started to write words there and then, which we now know to be true after seeing the recent Get Back documentary. It also says, P.S. John adds, it's John playing the Fab Live guitar solo. Up next is another promotional poster, again from Melody Maker Music Magazine. This is from July 8th, 1967. New Parlophone single, R5620 for the Beatles, All You Need Is Love. The next article I've got is a review for the Beatles Abbey Road album, and this is from the Nottinghamshire Guardian, and it was dated Saturday, October 4th, 1969, so just over a week after the original release date of Abbey Road. The headline is, The Beatles Chasing Many Styles at the Same Time in Abbey Road. And Paul McCartney says here, I don't like explaining albums. The only way you can explain it is to hear it. You can't really use words about music, otherwise we'd do a talking album. The album is the explanation, and it's up to you to make what you want of it. It then says, thus Paul McCartney neatly preempts and, in a way, neutralises the millions of words which, during the next few months, will be devoted to reviewing, analysing, discussing, philosophising, and possibly even politicising the Beatles' new long-playing record, Abbey Road, released by Apple. And this is a really positive review about the album. I'll read you a section from the end of the review. It's by Ray Connolly. He says, I do know that this is a brilliant album, that George Harrison's contribution, both as a songwriter and musician, has never been greater. It also says that Paul's Maxwell Silver Hammer is as likely to become a standard as Big as When I'm 64. Well, not quite. This is a really nice article to have. Abbey Road has always been my favourite Beatles album. I'll show you the date again there. And again, I'll hold that up for you to have a good look at if you pause your video and zoom in. Up next is an excitable article saying Beatles dig it together on new album. It says all four Beatles combined to write a song on their new album out next month, and the long-awaited Let It Be film, a bioscopic experience, is to be simultaneously premiered in London and Liverpool on May 20th. John, Paul, George and Ringo together wrote Dig It, a number improvised as they recorded it, explained Apple's Derek Taylor. They probably won't share composing credits on the record, but this was definitely a track they all contributed to. It's too bad we only got just over 50 seconds of Dig It on the Let It Be album. But there's that article for you. Up next, Beatles album hits American jackpot. Beatles have hit the jackpot yet again. In America, the Let It Be album looks like becoming the biggest seller of all time. And The Long and Winding Road, the track released as a single there, has already outsold Yesterday. Here's that article for you. And this next one promoting the Beatles' Let It Be and Yellow Submarine films. I thought this next article was quite funny. Lennon has the guts to be Prime Minister, say Britain's young voters. If you could choose a pop personality as your local MP, who would you like it to be and why? John Lennon gets 22.5% of the votes, Cliff Richard 7.1%, Jimmy Savile 6.2%. This next article relates to the Beatles breaking up and potentially Paul McCartney quitting the group. McCartney to quit the Beatles, how the rumours started. It says, are the Beatles dead? Will Paul McCartney ever write a song with John Lennon again? Will he ever play with the Beatles again? Will the Beatles ever make another single? These are just some of the questions that even now, a week after the shock reports in every national newspaper, still remain unanswered. As far as anyone can glean from the sparse information available, Paul McCartney has not said he has left the Beatles, but then nor has he said he has not left the Beatles. This next article relates to Paul being harassed by fans, and it reads quite simply, let him be. And it reads, Paul McCartney, who fled London last Friday, leaving behind him a furore of doubt and rumour about his future following his Quit the Beatles bombshell, was back from a secret hideaway in the country on Sunday, ready to work the first project for his new company. It then says, a close friend of Paul's told Disc music magazine, he's not giving any interviews at the moment. In fact, fans and other people have been making his life a bit of a misery lately by picketing his pad. There's that article again for you. And I thought this was really funny. John Lennon, half a skinhead. It reads, here is the picture the whole world has been waiting for. Really? It shows for the first time Beatle John Lennon and his wife Yoko Ono after having their hair cut. The couple had their hair secretly cropped a few days ago during a visit to Denmark. At first, they were thought to have had a real skinhead scalping, but as it happens, their trim puts them more in the ranks of the short back and sides brigade. There's that article again. This next article is really cool. It's from Music Week, April 22nd, 1972. The Decade's Top 100 Singles. I'll hold it there for you to have a good look at. It reads, this chart, prepared by the BBC with the help of the record companies and broadcast on the Tony Blackburn show in recent weeks, presents for the first time in best-selling order the number one hits of the 10 years from 1962 to 71. Having compiled through its own research a list of 200 singles which have topped the charts during the period, the BBC then asked record companies to supply, in confidence, the sales achieved. There are 15 Beatles songs in this list, and also My Sweet Lord by George Harrison. And the Beatles hold 5 of the top 6 spots with She Loves You, I Want to Hold Your Hand, then we get Ken Dodd with Tears, and then Can't Buy Me Love, I Feel Fine, and the double A side We Can Work It Out, Day Tripper at 6. But I'll let you have a look for yourself. Isn't that great? And again, I'll hold it up here for you to have a good look at. So now I'll take you through some of the promotional posters that I've got. This one is from Melody Maker, 9th of May, 1970, for the Beatles' Let It Be album. And the next one, Happy Xmas, War Is Over, John and Yoko, the Plastic Ono Band, record mirror December 2nd, 1972. George's The Concert for Bangladesh from RTR, January 15th, 1972. This next poster from Melody Maker, April 25th, 1970, promoting Paul McCartney's debut album. Up next is a poster from Disc and Music Echo, August 14th, 1971. New single, Paul and Linda McCartney, Backseat of My Car and Heart of the Country. There's the date for you. Up next from Sounds Music Magazine, March 18th, 1972. Another monster from Apple, promoting Ringo's Back Off Boogaloo. And this next one from Disc Magazine, February 24th, 1973, promotes Yoko's Approximately Infinite Universe. And lastly, for the promotional posters, may we introduce to you the act you've known for all these years, from Sounds Magazine, April 21st, 1973, promoting the Beatles' Red and Blue albums. So now I'll take you through some of the news cutouts that I put together in my own personal Beatles scrapbook in the mid to late 90s. This article sadly relates to George Harrison's ongoing battle with cancer. George has lumps cut out of his throat. This was reported in The Sun on Saturday, August 27th, 1997. I was only 16 at the time, and naturally I was following this story, and it was really scary to hear this news about one of your heroes. The Sun newspaper in England is terrible. My brother Liam calls it a comic, but they do come up with some good headlines every now and then. This one says, She Dubs You, relating to Paul McCartney receiving his knighthood. This next article is a millennium poll for the greatest album ever. And as you can see there, Pepper tops the Millennium Pops. You've got Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band at number 1, the Stone Roses debut at number 2, Revolver at number 3, The Bends by Radiohead at number 4, What's the Story, Morning Glory by Oasis at number 5, Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd at number 6, OK Computer by Radiohead at number 7, Nevermind by Nirvana at number 8, Astral Weeks by Van Morrison at number 9. You've got the Beatles' White Album at number 10, Bob Dylan's Blood on the Tracks at number 11, and Abbey Road at number 12 by the Beatles. There you go again. This next article is another poll from the Sun newspaper, Saturday, August 15th, 1998. You can't beat them. Beatles, still top of the world. There's the date there at the top. And in this poll, it goes through the 100 all-time best. Number 1, the Beatles. Number 2, Elvis Presley. Number 3, Frank Sinatra. 4, Queen. 5, Elton John. 6, Celine Dion. 7, Cliff Richard. 8, Oasis. 9, Luciano Pavarotti. Number 10, Phil Collins. That's an odd list. You've got the Rolling Stones at 17, Pink Floyd at 27. Where are Led Zeppelin? Dire Straits 33. Bob Dylan 41, Led Zeppelin 46, John Lennon as a solo artist 47. I'll hold that up there for you again so you can have a good look. This next article reads Lennon versus Lennon, and I will have cut this out of Some Music magazine, but it relates to Sean Lennon's debut album Into the Sun being released on the same day as Julian Lennon's Photograph Smile. And it says, despite denying any sibling rivalry, Sean and Julian Lennon plan to release their albums on the same day in May. Sean Lennon's debut album, Into the Sun, shared the spotlight with Photograph Smile by his half-brother Julian, when both were scheduled for release on May 18th. Both parties claim innocence, with 35-year-old Julian shrugging, I've certainly heard about Sean's album. Mine has been about 2 years in the making, so it's a bit strange that the timing is identical. And I remember feeling a little bit sorry here for Julian at the time, because this seemed to me like a record company move to create a bit of a mini war and boost album sales. But you see, with it being Sean Lennon's debut album, he took a lot of the spotlight here. This next article reads, Sad Macca shuts down his fan club. He can't go on without Linda. Devastated, Sir Paul McCartney has closed down his official fan club because he can't bear to run it without his late wife Linda. I'm sure Paul McCartney didn't run his fan club himself. I'm sure he got a team to do it for him, but it says, Sir Paul, 56, and Linda, who died of breast cancer in April, launched Club Sandwich nearly 21 years ago. The final issue, number 86, is a special tribute to Linda. This article is funny. The Sun, obviously. Monday, December 7th, 1998. I don't want Everton. Beatle Paul snubs 60 million move to make him owner. Sir Paul McCartney has flattened an ambitious move to make him the new owner of Everton. The former Beatle turned down an invitation to save the ailing Merseysiders with a 60 million buyout of former chairman Peter Johnson. Now, if I remember right, I remember hearing or seeing an interview with Paul McCartney many years ago where he said that most of his family were actually Evertonians. So naturally, the Sun probably picked that up and ran this ridiculous story. There it is for you. And I'll leave you with this. This is me, Keir Smith, back in March, April 1998. And I'm ranking the best album by the Beatles, the best song on that album, the album rating overall, and who the best songs on the album were by. Here you go. See for yourself. Abbey Road, 10. The White Album, 10. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, 10. Magical Mystery Tour, 10. Let It Be, Rubber Soul and Revolver all get 9s. Best song on Abbey Road, You Never Give Me Your Money. I still say that. Best song on the White Album, Happiness Is a Warm Gun. I still say that. The best song on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, A Day in the Life. I still say that. For Magical Mystery Tour, I've got the best song as All You Need Is Love. Fantastic as it is, I would disagree now and I would change my mind to I'm the Walrus or Penny Lane. Best song on Help, I've got Yesterday. I'd have that as maybe my 5th or 6th favourite now. Rubber Soul, I've got Nowhere Man. That's a fine song, but I'd probably go with The Word now. But yeah, I loved lists back then and I still do. I'll show that to you one more time. Okay, that's quite enough of me being a nerd for one day, but hopefully you enjoyed seeing those articles and maybe even learned something new from them. So all that leaves me to say is thanks as always for watching the video. I truly appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.